Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Lunch and Learn with the SLSO. My name is Tim Munro. I'm Creative Partner with the SLSO, and today I'm very excited to be peeking behind the musical curtain with the help of three brilliant musicians, the SLSO's own music director, Stéphane Denève, and two composers, Puts and Nathalie Joachim. We will be learning a little bit about the process of bringing new pieces of music into the world during this next hour. Just one housekeeping thing. We're going to invite you to ask questions using the chat function throughout today's Lunch and Learn. We'll be taking questions from the audience throughout the next hour via chat. And we'd like to extend our special thanks to the SLSO 2020-21 Classical Series sponsor, the Stewart Family Foundation. Now, it's my very great pleasure to welcome the three guests who should all be appearing on your screen. I'm delighted to be joined by the SLSO's music director, Stéphane Denève. Stéphane, your music making is totally and completely infectious. Sometimes it feels like every inch of your body is just like charged with musical electricity. But you're also super involved in the creation of new works, which is why we're here all today. So to help us do that, we're joined by two composers. Nathalie Joachim is a Grammy-nominated composer, flutist, and vocalist. She's co-founder of the duo Flutronics, and she is just taking the world by storm. Her music pushes for social change, and it often reflects on her heritage as a Haitian American woman. Nathalie puts every ounce of her being into everything that she creates. And she's currently working on a collaboration with the SLSO and the voices of the In Unison Chorus. The premiere of that will be happening, conducted by Stéphane later this season. And one quick note is that the SLSO and the Pulitzer Foundation have just released a short film of her piece Damwenyo for cello and electronics. This piece is so beautiful and moving. It's with the SLSO's own Lizzie Chung, and you can find that on slsostories.org. Now on to Kevin Puts. Kevin's music is heard in every nook and cranny of this entire country. He's written lots of orchestral and operatic music. He's a winner of the Pulitzer Prize for his first opera, Silent Night. And last season, Stéphane and the SLSO performed a suite from Silent Night, and that performance will actually be rebroadcast this Saturday at 8 p.m. on St. Louis Public Radio. Kevin's just brilliant to work with. He's generous and humble, and he loves music with the passion of just the truest geek. So welcome to the three of you. Now, I wanted to have this chat in the form of a kind of journey. We're going to take kind of journey through the creation of a new work. So let's travel back in time. We're going to begin where the collaboration begins. Stéphane, how on earth do you go about choosing what composers to work with? What appeals to you? How do you make those decisions? You must listen to thousands of hours of music.
Yes, indeed. I listen to a lot of music from every epoch. And actually, the process of choosing a piece that has been premiered yesterday or centuries ago is exactly the same. It just has to speak to my heart, as simple as that. And ultimately, I feel as an interpret, I cannot be convincing if I'm not myself 100% or 200% convinced by every piece I conduct. So it's very easy. I just try to hear to everything that is possible, and I judge with my own feelings, and I do that for pieces of the repertoire and pieces that will, I hope, become piece of the repertoire in the future.
Oh, I love that. Just that your heart is at the center of all of this, no matter whether it's Berlioz or Beethoven or Kevin Puts. So Kevin and Nathalie, I want to go to the beginning of when you get that call, the call for the commission, the call, the email. Actually, is it an email or is it a call? Kevin, do you usually get emails or calls?
Oh, uh, let's see. Well, I think Stefan and I talked by phone about this short piece that I wrote for. I was so honored to write this 3-minute little piece for Stéphane's very first concert at the St. Louis Symphony, based on a Guillaume de Machaut tune from the the medieval period. But we talked for about 45 minutes, and that was our first meeting. And so I guess it happens in different ways, but certainly I think it's important for the composer and the conductor to know each other at some level, to speak and to have a connection. And we had not worked together before, so it was necessary in that case.
That's great. Yeah. So Nathalie, do you get emails? Do you get phone calls? And then second question, what's the first thing you do as you're thinking about a new piece?
Yeah, I mean, mostly emails. I definitely got an email from SLSO and near about fell out of my chair when I got it, but out of sheer joy and excitement. But really the first thing, I mean, I think that the first thing, especially in this case, writing for In Unison, the first conversation that I had was just wanting to know more about who I'm writing for. And obviously, the SLSO is an orchestra. I know their sound. I love them as players. But especially when you're working with voices, they're so personal as instruments. They're so deeply personal. And so my very first question was, let's have a conversation about who In Unison actually is. Who are these voices that are going to be making this work come to life?
Oh, I love that, and particularly the idea that who you're writing for is so important. And Kevin, in the short fanfare you wrote, you actually did incorporate some elements of Stéphane and the SLSO into that fanfare. In the Frenchness of it, you want to talk about that quickly?
Yeah, it just there's this beautiful tune by, as I said, the composer Machaut from so long ago. It's a tune that I heard when I was in school, and I love it. And I actually tried to base a piece on it several years ago, maybe 20 years ago, and it just wasn't all that successful. So I decided to kind of revisit it but yeah, it was certainly the French aspect of it, and I think the concert Stéphane was putting together, he can speak more to this maybe, but was about bringing together the French and American traditions, and so that did that very well, to bring my own compositional voice to this piece that came from so long ago, that was based on a song written in French.
And if I may add to that, it was fantastic because it was fitting totally our theme that season, my first season, which was to create an arch between the American and French culture, and it was really just the perfect connection that the music could find. But Tim, you just asked, is it an email or a phone call? Actually, what I found very strange in this world is that how small the world is sometimes, and I love coincidences. I love encounters, and then why suddenly something just connect people. And what is very interesting, both with Nathalie and Kevin, is that I got to know them way before we met in person, just because of a connection via Philadelphia. So I'll start with Kevin. Actually, Kevin wrote a piece for a great music lover in Philadelphia and a major donor called Michael Cohn, and he wrote a trio. And way before I even thought about meeting and collaborating with Kevin, I was invited at a dinner, and this couple say, "Oh, we had commissioned a trio. It's so good, and it's a great composer, Kevin Puts." I didn't know him yet. It was in 2009. And I listened in this, room in that home to Kevin's music, and that's how I got to know the name, the music. I loved it. It was actually a very good piece. And then I listened to more music, and it led to this collaboration years later. And in the case of Nathalie, it's quite fantastic. Nathalie is also a fantastic flutist, a great singer, by the way. And by coincidence, it happens that we did work together in Philadelphia. Nathalie was part for a while of a fantastic ensemble called Eight Blackbird. And in 2017, actually, the October 19th precisely, we performed, I can show you that, we performed together.
I found a picture today from the show.
Look, Nathalie, I may beat you to it. Wait a second. Up, is that picture?
Yes! That's so funny. It's amazing. It's almost to the day, years ago. It's so funny.
Exactly. And so I met her first as a flute player in this wonderful ensemble and performing some Jennifer Higdon music. And then, of course, I learned that she was also a composer. I listened to her music online and heard some great, really inspiring vocals, because I love music that has great melodies, that have a lyrical aspect. And both composers here, Kevin and you, Nathalie, you just are so talented with the most mysterious part of music, which is the melodic element. And that's why I decided with, of course, Eric Finlay and Ian Kivler, and Marilyn Bernard, we discussed, and I said, like, I would love to make something, for the Unison Chorus premiere, and it was just the perfect match for this melodic, lyrical aspect of your talent.
Oh, yes. That's so beautiful. And Stéphane, it speaks to how much sort of personal connection you really want to have with the people that you're working with. So can you say like a little bit about how much involvement do you like to have through the process? You make the first call, then like what's your relationship then with Nathalie and Kevin as they're working on their pieces?
Well, I mean, definitely we have only one life, and I really want to feel friendly vibes with everybody I collaborate with, because it's essential, I think, to the collaboration and also just to the fun of life by itself. And in fact, in both cases, but usually as well with other composers I've worked with, I mean, Guillaume Connaisson, Detlef Gladert, Magnus Lindberg, Jess Macmillan, and these people, Jennifer Higdon, usually we speak quite a lot indeed in advance to have common ground and discussion. But then I try my best to be respectful. So when the process starts of composing, I mean, I'm not controlling. I will not just be over the shoulders and say like, what are you writing? So then it's actually just waiting, and the result arrives. But I think it's very important that at some point, the submarine closes, its door, just go into a pure talent of composition. They have to be writing what they want. You cannot control that. So then it's a surprise at the end.
I love that, and I wanna get in the second part of this to chat with Kevin and Nathalie about what it's like to be in the submarine. But before we do that, we've got some great questions in the chat, and there's a kind of group of questions that kind of revolve around, for Kevin and Nathalie, like going back in time for you both. How one of the question askers writes that composition seems like a precarious profession, which I feel like is putting it lightly. So Kevin and Nathalie, maybe starting with you, Nathalie, how did you start creating your own music, and how did that become a career choice?
It's funny. I came around to it in a little bit of a sneaky way, I would say. My sort of love for songwriting and telling story through song really came from my relationship with my grandmother, which started very early on in my life, and I never even really saw as a formative musical part of my training, but just being able to have a close relationship with someone who encourages you to use your voice, who encourages you to be authentic in your sharing of music together, which for us is of cultural importance, but was also really, critical to our relationship. And then, I went through the full conservatory path as a flutist and embodied that identity, but sort of held on to this sort of secret life of writing things for people here and there, but not telling anybody about it, and trying to be my sort of best flute self, and kind of hiding my vocal side, hiding my composer side. And it wasn't until Probably when I went to do my master's degree, I really started to get more serious about it. That was the first time that I had applied to anything as a composer, which was a surprise to everyone. And I feel like a lot of my career has been like that. I just sort of pop out and say, hello, here I am doing this new thing. And so it was the first time that I sort of took a risk in doing that. But a lot of my composing developed through relationships with friends and colleagues, writing for people who would trust me with their instruments, with their voice, and who I could trust to also be a wonderful sounding board for me. And that's really how that started before I started getting more formal training as a composer and really bringing it into the forefront of my career. And in many ways, all of the aspects of what I do, composing, I think, makes me a stronger performer, makes me a stronger educator. And so to me, it's critical to all of the parts of myself and all of the parts of my artistry. And I'm glad to be openly, not secretly, but openly in my life as a composer now.
That's great. Come out of the shadows, Nathalie. Kevin, did you I gather you started much earlier, like on the kind of composing track. Can you talk a little bit about like how did that come to be for you?
Yeah, I mean, I started music by playing the piano by ear when I was very young, trying to go to movies and see these like blockbuster science fiction movies with John Williams scores and try to come home and play on the piano when I was very young, and I couldn't quite figure out the harmony a lot of the time because it was so much more sophisticated than I realized. And so I started that, but playing by ear and kind of improvising on the piano, and then started piano lessons when I was 8, and I was just not a good student. I found it tedious and horrible. I was constantly being disappointing my teachers for not practicing, and I think I had more fun just using the piano as a means of making up music, of sort of dreaming up sound and melody and harmony. And but then I got more serious about the piano, and I went to school, college, and I studied piano. And I think at the time, during college, I was so confused about what kind of composer I wanted to be, and I didn't really know how to do it either. I mean, you can't, just decide you want to write an orchestra piece and then just start doing it. It takes a lot of study and building up to that. But I could play the piano, and I did a lot of piano playing, and a lot like, I played for people's recitals, and I played concertos, and I played in the New Music Ensemble. And I think I learned a lot about music through that, to getting your hands on the music. And it sort of, I had no idea what a composer's life would look like, even in college, or how I would put together a career. And I didn't really think about it a whole lot. And the fact that I'm doing it now, that, it's a, full-time, writing commissions, and I teach and do other things. But the fact that it's like the person said, it's a precarious kind of career choice, and I feel extremely privileged to be able to do it.
Well, privileged, but also both of you just exceptional talents and joys to work with. And I think that's actually something that I want to make sure I say out loud, is that all three of the artists on this call are incredibly wonderful colleagues to work with. And I think that's just such an important part of this. So let's go into the submarine. So you guys are like, the submarine is lowering into the water. The water's getting higher and higher. What is it like to go into that isolation? Or do you go into that isolation? What is that journey like for you both as you work on a new work? Nathalie, maybe you first?
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk specifically about this work. I mean, again, this idea of getting to know the people was very important to me. So I actually early in the summer, I spent many weeks having wonderful phone calls and conversations with a lot of the members of In Unison, which was such a treat. really a gift in so many ways. I remember actually when I had done my last interview, I actually sent an email to Stéphane because I was like, this is just, it's amazing. It's amazing how when you allow people to share who they are with you, more often than not, they're really willing to do so. And that was wonderful for me to record those conversations, to have them, to begin to piece together the text for the work. And the past few months has been really centered around me deeply listening to their stories. I myself am really searching for a space to share who they are in their own words, share their connection with one another, and share the meaning of that sense of community in the choir, deep in the heart of the work. And so much of that text, allowing also for many of the stories to tell me how they want to be told through the orchestra, and so for me, that's been beautiful. It's been about deep listening, and that in many ways has started to really, they have shaped what the orchestra will do, the story that the orchestra will tell alongside them, and that's been just a real gift. So the submarine for me has been about writing, but also just creating space for the voices to speak for themselves.
And that term, deep listening, I feel like that's a very powerful way of thinking about writing, because I think we think of writing as like you putting something out into the world, but actually that you're listening as part of it. Kevin, are you a little more solitary? When you start on a new work, is there a kind of way that you start to work?
No, I mean, it's very solitary for me for sure. And I don't share anything with anyone while I'm working. I don't even, not even with my family. And I have headphones on, and as I mess around on the keyboard and the computer, it's all very private. And I like the process. I like to be in the submarine. It's I like, I would say for months or years before I start a piece, I'm just kind of playing around with the possibilities of it in my head. I mean, Stéphane and I are going to work on a piece in a couple of years, or sometime soon, and
Yeah.
And I'm, so I'm working on another piece at the moment, but I would say every week, maybe every day at some point, I'm playing around with ideas for that piece that's down the future, just in terms of like the concept of it, or maybe the structure of it, or the approach to the orchestra, in a very abstract way. But once I start, it's exactly as you said. It's about listening, deep and concentrated listening for the next thing and for where it may go, and there's that element. There's just the simple music coming through you, and what feels intuitively right, and then there's the constantly stepping back and trying to judge the whole. Okay, where am I in this structure right now? And going back and sort of focusing and then panning out, I guess is the way to put it. But I find that I think one of the most important things for a composer is determining the process, so that the process is satisfying. Because you won't do it over and over again if it's just drudgery, and if it's just you have to find your way of working. And I found that from getting to know many composers, that everybody has a different approach, and it's whatever works for them.
I totally forgot to even think about that it might actually be enjoyable. Like somehow it seems stressful. Stéphane, I want to ask you about your own submarine, because once these wonderful people submit a piece to you, you go into your own submarine in a certain way, I imagine. What's that process like? Where does it begin? Does it begin at the piano? Does it begin in your ears? Where does it begin?
Yes, just to add a little thing to what Kevin said first. What is interesting with Kevin is that I know for discussing with him that he writes the piece in order. And as he just said, every composer has a different approach to the process. And many people sketch some kind of parts of the piece and try to make a structure out of it. and sometimes write something before something else, and like a puzzle. And I find very, very, very beautiful and very telling about the style of Kevin, and its incredible journey that every piece I know of him has. Being his fourth symphony, being in the sea landscape. There is always of course, the Brightness of Light, which is a wonderful piece he wrote recently for René Fleming, and there is a feeling of continuity, and I was very touched that it's also the process. You tell me if I'm saying something wrong. That is writing a piece, from A to Z, and you can feel that lyricism. So for me, studying a piece, once again, it's a bit boring, sorry, but it's the same for me as studying another piece from the repertoire I don't know yet. There are luckily still a lot of pieces from the so-called, dead composers repertoire that is still new to me. So I go to the piano. I'm a bit old school. I take the score and I put my finger on the right key. It's very demanding because you have to, but I'm very used to reduce this thing and to play at the piano the score. And it has to sound good. And the fact is, every piece of music from the Baroque era to today, which I love, can always be satisfying, reduced, just played by a piano only. So you hear, of course, only the skeleton of the piece sometimes, because some pieces are, especially the French repertoire, for instance, is extremely colorful in the orchestration. So at the piano, you cannot have all these colors of the orchestra, but yet the skeleton of the piece has to be satisfying. And I do that. I have a little story to tell you. In 2001, Leonard Slatkin invited me to make my symphonic debut at the National Symphony in Washington. And so it was in 1999 that I was engaged. And he said very, very kindly to me, he said, like, well, would like you to do this. I think it was Brahms' Second Symphony and something from Berlioz, the Death of Cleopatra. And he said, can you start the concert with 15, 20 minutes of a living composer? And he proposed, him and the artistic directors then, maybe, I don't know, Dutilleux, Boulez, somebody like that. And very kind of arrogantly, maybe, or boldly, they said, no, I prefer to not do those composers that are so arrived, so famous. I would like to bring something new, because a younger composer may be something that would make more sense than an established, older composer. And I called all the publishers everywhere. And I said, like, please, I need you to send me every score you have, which is 15, 20 minutes of French music, whatever it is. I received, and I said, of course, it's for the Kennedy Center, 3 concerts, so it was slightly attractive for the publishers. I received tons of scores. And well, some of those you just have to read, and it really looks like it's not music, I'm afraid. So that's not my cup of tea, as we say in English. So some scores were thrown away quickly, but I'm a serious guy. So most of them, I still came to the piano and just tried to read the notes and go in and feel if I was connecting to it. And most of the music, I must say, you have to know that most of the music is not good, because it has always been the case 3 centuries ago, 2 centuries ago. Now you have 1,000 pieces written for one really satisfying one. It's a normal kind of proportion. And then in that case, in 2001, I suddenly went and opened a score of a French composer called Connaisson. No idea about him, didn't know his age, who he was, whatever. Just opened the score, and I just got totally hooked by the music, and I love playing the music. And that's how I started my collaboration with these composers, which has been a very fruitful one. So to answer, sorry, briefly your question finally, I just go to the piano, read the score. It has to sound interesting, captivating, good. If it's not, then too bad.
I love it. Yes, captivating. And that I really want to kind of switch. There's so many great questions happening in the chat at the moment, and it's just going to be impossible to get to all of them. Thank you so much for your incredibly thoughtful questions, but I'm going to just really switch to try and do a lightning round of some questions. That's not true. None of us is capable of a lightning round, right? Daniel says that I think comes off a little bit of something that Stéphane just said, or touches on it, I think. Daniel says in the chat that he was privileged to drive Kevin around And Kevin said when they were driving around, it's okay again to write pretty music. Can you just expand a tiny bit on that, Kevin?
I don't remember saying that, but I don't know at what point I determined it was okay, but I mean, it's always been okay. I know my teachers I know it's a lightning round, so I'll make it quick, but my teachers.
I really was joking.
Okay. Well,
you take your time, Kevin.
You hear these stories that your teachers tell you about, when I was taking composition lessons, and if you wrote an octave, that was like a bad thing, that you have to write intervals that are very, I don't know, dissonant or something. I actually like a lot of different types of music. I mean, I think people seem to associate my music with tonality. But I don't think it's strictly, for one thing, I only stay in that realm. And I think what's interesting about music, especially these days, is that there's so many languages, so many musical languages that have happened over the last 100 years or even more, even like simultaneously, that all of that can sort of filter through you. And I just don't believe in rejecting anything as a possible inspiration, as a possible influence. I'm always staying open to everything I hear, and I never want to say like, this is right, this is wrong. I think what I want to do, as Stéphane has suggested, is tell a story in a way, like to make the music compelling and to draw the listener through the music. But there's not only one way to do that, for sure.
Yeah, I'm sorry if that felt like a provocation. I don't know if it was intentionally a provocation on behalf of the person asking. I have a question from another Daniel that actually touches on something that Stéphane was talking about, I think, and maybe Nathalie, you can take this. This is Daniel, who asks, do you play or hear the various instruments in your head so that you relate the different parts? I think this is such a great question that gets at how you work as a composer. Hearing the notes on command, asks Daniel, seems extraordinary to me.
I will say that I actually really love Stéphane's description of the skeleton of the piece needs to feel good when it's reduced. And for writing for this, in unison is over 100 voices. The orchestra itself is huge. I find when I'm working on a piece this large, this is the most massive piece I've ever worked on, and so I am working very small. And the idea is to right now, I have this sort of concentration of the voices and a concentration of what the orchestra will be doing, and then my job. I'm sort of at the phase now where I'm starting to expand that, but I started very small. I think when I'm working with a smaller group, then I'm really hearing everything at once, and you're hearing things, individually. It's also just the idea that like 100 voices is a massive instrument that can also be quite flexible in an interesting way. So I hear them in a concentrated way versus, like I'm working on a piece for a room full of teeth right now that's, they're just 8 voices. And I really am thinking of those as 8 individual instruments, on their own. So I think it's the bigger the group gets, the sort of smaller I work, and then I work to expand. And the opposite is true. Like if the group is very small, then I am actually really hearing everybody together as once and considering each instrument individually.
And you guys, the 2 composers on this panel, you talk about the way that you approach each commission with kind of such intensity. There's a question in the chat about how whether you work on multiple pieces at the same time, how on earth you would juggle that. Kevin, maybe? How do you go about something like that?
Yeah, I guess as I said, I don't do that. I work on one at a time. I've been working on an opera for over a year now, and I just I've learned not to try to do too much. It just makes me crazy, and I like to focus very hard on what I'm working on, and think about it a lot. And the more I don't know, if someone takes the risk of commissioning me and hoping for something positive out of it, then I want to take it really seriously. I just don't believe in doing everything that comes through my inbox or phone or whatever. And so I really do focus very hard on one piece. And during that time, I'm, as I said, kind of thinking very abstractly about future things that I know I'm going to do in the coming years.
I see Natalie nodding. I'll take that as an agreement, a mark of agreement.
Totally in agreement. I mean, I am sort of similarly, like, my pieces of my headspace are in each of the commissions that I have, and you know, I'll have moments where I'm like, okay, this is an idea I want to get down for this piece, and I want to make sure, and I have extensive notes. I'm sure Kevin does too.
Like physical notes? Do you take like physical notes in like in a notebook? Do you write
the sort of map of each piece, or sometimes it'll come to me like I'm eating dinner and I just realized that, you know, actually it would be great if this kind of orchestral texture is appealing to me. I want to make sure to remember that when I get back down into it. But, you know, every piece is so personal that it does really feel like you have to really get into the heart of the thing, and you have to be in relationship with the piece as you're writing it, you know. And so it's very hard, I think, to sort of multitask in that way. So you know, I sort of have to set a strict schedule of like, I'm working very intensely and lovingly on this one piece in this moment in time, even if the others are, of course, on my mind and in some way beginning to take shape, you know, at least abstractly.
There's a great question in the chat about, Stéphane, whether you yourself compose. And I think we think of, you know, Kevin as a pianist, also Natalie as a flutist and a vocalist. You know, I think there is this sense in classical music that sometimes there are boundaries, sometimes there aren't. Yeah.
Look, everybody's different. I need to tell you something. Natalie and Kevin, they are respectively my heroine and hero. Really, they are. I'm only an interpret trying to serve the composer. And I say that with a lot of respect. I'm not lying, actually. I found so great that I can try to give life to the music they imagine. It's such a privilege, but they are the one creating, you know, the music I will try to interpret. And it's an incredible talent, a genius, which I'm afraid I don't have. I mean, I did compose in my life, basically, to say the truth, when I was a teenager and I was madly in love. So suddenly I would kind of put some songs for the lady I would feel for. And I'm not sure you want to hear this song.
I mean, yes, we do.
No,
Did you write the poetry? Did you write the texts?
Oh, everything, but it is certainly of no value. So when you only compose in a state of mad, passionate love, it means you're not a composer, because a composer needs to every morning feel the urge to write something on a paper. I do not have this talent. I'm very jealous of them, I have to say, very. I would give everything to be a great composer instead of a conductor. But I'm only an interpret, so voila. That's
well. Let's catch this journey at where you really step in, which is when you guys get into the rehearsal room with Stéphane. So Stéphane, talk us through what typically happens when you're premiering a new piece? Do you meet with the composer? What is that experience of?
Oh, I love that. In a way, that's one of the most exciting part of my career. That's really what I love the most. I don't want to appear blasé or I don't know, but I'm very lucky. I've been conducting La Mer of Debussy or I don't know, Beethoven symphonies, like with the greatest orchestra in this world, and it's incredible. But and I will love to do that until the last day of my life. But it's an experience that is, that I know. What I adore is when you work on a new piece with a composer, you just don't know where it goes, and you have the possibility to shape quite a lot, and to sometimes even propose some little changes. So I would say that maybe the closest to to trying to be a little bit, in the same room as a composer, is just to suggest like, I love when suddenly we imagine the same thing. We imagine the piece as a little planet, and it's fascinating how sometimes a composer and an interpret can have the same feeling, the same kind of flavor. Yes, we want something, and we kind of feel the connection. And then with my little experience as a conductor, I could say like, maybe you should change that, or maybe this doubling is actually not effective, it's not an ego thing. It's not to put my stamp on it, but it's just what I love is the excitement to search together the best solution. And over the years, this has been really the most gratifying thing when you can help the birth of a piece and present it the best possible way and connect with the intention, the dreams, basically. Sharing dreams is one of the best things in life, no? So that's the most exciting process. This moment where we are close to the premiere, and we can tweak things and discuss it and get excited together. I love it. Be ready, Nathalie.
Well, and you, as an audience member, I feel that engagement with the pieces that you conduct so completely and absolutely. And so it seems like that's incredibly important.
What is music, actually? I mean, it's a big question. What is music? The fact is, it's so mysterious. And why, to reflect on what Kevin says before, why suddenly some music have a soul presence and some don't? And it can have so many different type of languages. It can be still empty. And why some pieces God knows how much I love Beethoven. I'm afraid I could still name a few pieces of Beethoven, which I think are not very, very good, quite so much inferior to his biggest masterworks. So you kind of wonder, it's the same style, it's the same man, it's the same, like how come some pieces just get to this incredible status and enrich humanity and some don't? So, when some Daniel said like, it's okay to write pretty music again, I think pretty music again, it's not enough. It's just what the music can give us. And there are many ways for sure. What is great, and I want to say that to audience members who sometimes have this kind of old cliche, outdated cliche that new music means dissonances and means something kind of difficult to enjoy because it's not enough pure beauty in it. I would like to tell them, you are right. You are right that actually a part of the 20th century reflected, I suppose, on the world that they were in after the Second World War, after this horrible time. There was indeed a music reflecting that. Maybe it's a bit simplistic, but yes, a lot of music has been written that is very hard to take. But now, today, we are in a postmodern world, indeed, where so many music is possible, so many styles of music are possible. And a lot of composers, especially the two we have here, Nathalie and Kevin, really can feel free again to write what they feel, reflect their soul, reflect beauty if they want to. And that is really a great thing. And so for all the audience members, be curious. Just trust me as a programmer, as a conductor. I will always propose music which I think can give you lyricism, can give you beauty, can give you, soul. And we are in a good period where a lot of great music is written. That is very exciting.
Absolutely. 3 cheers. And actually there's a wonderful question in the chat that seems to kind of jump off that a little bit, which is talking about whether there is a separate whether we can separate the art from the artist a little bit. So the question is, in what ways do you or do you not bring your own identities and histories to your work? Is it a false idea that there's a separation between these two? Nathalie, do you want to I see you nodding.
I mean, for me, I will say, obviously a lot of my more recent work is and forthcoming work is very centered in my own connection to and embodying of my own and embracing of my own identity and including my heritage. But I will say that for me, actually, I really feel like my artistic practice has become centered in understanding connectivity, right? And that, to me, at its core, is a sort of an understanding of shared history, an understanding of shared space, an understanding of shared emotion, and in time and space together. And so a lot of that often involves creating space for other voices and identities and stories to be heard as well. But what interests me is how we are all connected. A sort of creating of a sense of collectivity in creating work, in that maybe it's, this idea of sort of transitioning from me to we at all points of the work. Like, is this, I think of a piece that I have with my grandmother. That piece is very personal to me, but for so many other people, it resonates to them from deep relationships in their own life, from a sense of nostalgia of home for them. And, even in beginning to work with In Unison, I found that there is a sort of universality and a sense of collectivity that I am hoping to transcend to the audience in a way that allows for them to feel a sense of ownership over the work as well. And so, yes, a lot of my work is really personal, but I try to transcend from just a sense of self, but a sense of togetherness, connectivity, a sense of us actually in the work. And that's what drives me, I think, to create.
Wow.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And honestly, as you were talking about that, and I was thinking about actually some pieces of Kevin's. Kevin, I mean, an opera like Silent Night feels like if there's anything that's about moving from me to we, it is a sense that there is this very specific story, but that it tells us things about who we are now. I mean, do you think about those things as you're working on operas based in the past, or, I don't know, telling stories? How do you choose those stories?
Well, I mean, that was such a beautiful answer that Nathalie gave. I can't add to it. I would say, in the case of an opera, the story is given to you, and of course you try to bring it to life in the best way possible. I think it's more interesting when I'm writing a so-called abstract piece of music, or something, a concerto, a flute concerto, a string quartet. And what happens then when you're just sort of left to your own devices to create anything, to tell any story, to reflect anything about the world that you're interested in reflecting. And I am not good at articulating what I'm doing in those moments, except that I would say that music for me is like church, or I'm not a religious person. So for me, it's this most spiritually connected I can feel, and the most connected I can feel to humanity, to the universe, to everything that is positive about who we are as a species. And so I guess I subconsciously go to that place where I'm imagining a kind of universality between all of us, and I want the music to reflect the most ideal version of that often, like to at least to approach or to aspire to the most idealized version of that. That's all I can describe of it exactly. I don't think it's a reflection necessarily of who I am. If my music feels that way, I'm not that way. I'm not perfect. I'm awkward. Sometimes I'm short-tempered. I'm all kinds of bad things, but my music, I try to go to a different place with it, and to have it be sort of a sanctuary in some sense.
Oh,
if that makes any sense at all.
I mean, I love the term. The word sanctuary feels very meaningful. Also, you are a lovely person, and you are a delight to work with. So, Kevin,
you should be at home with me.
We all. So, okay, now we really can do a lightning round, because we've had a few. This is the wonders and awfulnesses of Zoom, is that we can all see what you have and where you are. So we have a lightning round of some questions from the chat about where you are. The first question for Nathalie, which is, are the paintings behind you significant? The artworks behind you, are they significant to you in some way? Can you say a bit about that?
Yes, quickly, this one over the shoulder is actually the artwork from my recent album, From Daiti. It was created by a Brooklyn-based artist whose name is oh my gosh, I just blanked on her name. Erin Morley, and she's amazing, gorgeous. She did a beautiful depiction of a very classic style of Haitian artwork. So that's that. And then on this side, a very dear friend of mine named Marion Bolognesi, for a long time was doing all of these beautiful portraits of friends of ours. So I actually know the two people in the paintings, and it was painted by a dear friend. And almost all of the artwork around my home is personal to me in one way or another.
Which is lovely and speaks to all of the things that you've actually just been talking to us about this whole hour, I think. Stéphane, there's been a lot of questions about your ceiling. So can you say a bit about where you are, where you're beaming in from?
I am in St. Louis. I'm so happy I could be back, and I will continue to be back in November and January. This is fantastic that I can come here. And I am actually in a great room from the Angad Arts Hotel, and it's an hotel where you can choose the color of your room. So you have blue, red, yellow, and green. And I'm in this room because I love my wife, and we are on Skype very, very often. And actually, she loves the color green. That's her favorite color, and her eyes actually are green. And so voilà. This is green. This is very, very, very green.
I love that your room even has a personal connection. It feels like so wonderfully you that would be the case.
No, people are very nice here, and I love because it's just next door to the hall. So I feel I almost live in the hall. Like I have a piano in the dressing room. I can just go back and forth very quickly. It's extremely practical, and it's a great hotel. They are very kind to me. They treat me so well here. So voilà.
Call out to the Angad Arts Hotel.
Kevin, what is behind you?
What is that? A piece of music, or is that?
Yeah. Oh no, it's not. It's embarrassing. It's not like I'm trying to show off. It's the Rome Prize, in composition. But it's just like it fit on that part of the wall. And I never thought I'd be doing all this Zoom from this room. And this is a tiny little room in the third floor of our house. So it's not like you display this stuff, in the living room. But anyway, so I have a little tiny office where I do my work upstairs, and I live in Yonkers, New York. My son goes to school nearby, and my wife plays in the New York Philharmonic. I usually commute to Baltimore to teach at the Peabody Institute, and this is where we live.
And Nathalie, you are in Chicago, Illinois, where I am also. We're separated by about 3 blocks. So we're all in somewhat different locations. Actually, there's a comment in the chat, Stéphane, that because it's a green, we can use it as a green screen, and people could put whatever they want on the background behind you. So, not encouraging people, but just putting it out there. God, so sad. I don't know how that was an hour. My just huge thanks to all 3 of you for your contributions to this. Just a reminder that Nathalie's piece is currently available on slsostories.org. So please check that out. It's unspeakably beautiful and has been gorgeously shot.
Beautiful.
I just watched the video myself. I love it. So do go watch it. They did a wonderful job producing it.
Yeah, and Lizzie Chung, the SLSO cellist, and just any member of the SLSO has such beautiful heart in whatever that they do. Kevin, a note that Kevin's piece, The Suite from his opera Silent Night, will be broadcast on Saturday night at 8 p.m. On St. Louis Public Radio.
So moving piece. I mean, it's so great, this piece.
Well, thank you. It was, as I told Stéphane many times, just an absolutely incredible performance and a sort of ideal performance of that piece. I feel very fortunate to be able to hear my music played that way.
We are putting it on disc because it has to be known to the entire world. The symphonic version. So it will be the first official recording, and I'm so pleased because it is really.
Hold on, are you making news right now?
Yes, I don't know if I can. I didn't ask any.
Well, it's nobody. Nobody's listening. I mean, just 300 of your closest friends.
Sorry, I took liberty to say because I think it's important.
All right. Well, we'll whisper it. So just don't tell anyone important. All those lovely people out there, or do. It is a wonderful piece. So, thank you so much for joining in with all of your questions out there. They've been amazing, and just such a sadness that we can't get to all of them. And we'd like to invite you to continue to engage with the SLSO online through social media, YouTube, and slsostories.org. Everybody, mark your calendars for the next Lunch and Learn on Wednesday, November 18 at noon. Check your email inbox in the next week or two for invitation with details. Now, let's do the Zoom thing, and we're all going to wave awkwardly to one another until we're done. Thank you, lovely people, for joining.
Thank you.
See you soon, Nathalie, Kevin, Tim.
Bye.
So great people.